Ooh, girl, are you exhausted and worn out? Like, you need deep soul replenishment, but there's just no way you can travel right now. I got you. This is why I'm hosting a virtual rest retreat at the end of February, and you're invited. It's a real chance to get rest at a fraction of the cost of an in person retreat. And you can do it at a pace that works for you. You don't even have to go anywhere to receive this rest that you need. Learn more and join me at aliciamichelle.com/virtual rest retreat. Hi, I'm Alicia Michelle, best-selling author, ICF certified coach, and neurocoach. I love helping Christian women discover practical ways to manage emotions with science and scripture so they can live with more calm, more clarity, more confidence. I'm so glad you're here. Find a cozy spot and let's get started. Hi there. Welcome to today's episode of the Christian Mindset Coach with me, Alicia Michelle. In our last episode, we talked about surrender and we talked about how exhausting it is to live with stress when nothing is changing. We can stay stuck on these loops that make us feel like this hopelessness that's coming in a relationship or even a certain situation. There's this tension that doesn't resolve itself, and the effect that has not only inside us, but in the relationship and in our bodies. It's lots of stuff that weighs on us. If you've ever felt that tension, you know what that's like in a big way or a little way. So the answer we know underneath all of this, most of us, we recognize this naturally, is that we probably need to give some things up here. We probably need to surrender. We probably need to release. Okay. But the question I want to address today is, what do we do to help ourselves get there? Because for many of us, surrender, letting go, instead of fighting, letting it be, it doesn't feel peaceful. In fact, it feels the opposite of it. It feels like we're giving up. It feels like it doesn't matter to us anymore. So what do we do with those very real emotions that are behind the need that we know needs to happen, the thing that we know needs to happen? We need to just let it go. We need to surrender it. What do we do with that inside? Are we crazy for not just wanting to just let it go? What is that about? So there is a book right now that has been popular for a good year or so now. It's called Let Them. It's by Mel Robbins. And I have had a chance to look through the book. And I wanted to bring it up here in context of this conversation because in the book, she shares this idea that when things happen in our life that are frustrating, we can, I'm going to put it in air quotes, let them make that bad choice. We can let them be late for school again. We can let them not choose to follow this path that we've told them would be better. We can let a lot of stuff go. This is the mantra that's behind this book. And I feel like there's a lot of good points to that. There's a lot of good points to that because there does need to come this crux point, which we were talking about in the last episode, of realizing that the fighting isn't getting us what we're wanting. It's not getting us the peace, the fighting it, whether it's we're literally fighting with that person or we're just allowing the tension and the conflict to remain in our head. It's not giving us the result we want. We want calm. We want peace. We want to be neutral, right? We all just want more of that. So if this isn't working, maybe we do need to learn to just let them. And I get why that concept of having something simple to just say, let them, is helpful because it names something true. And that is, we can't control other people. We can't control that situation. In response, we can choose to not let it bother us. But for many women, the frustration isn't that we don't know we should let them. It's that we don't know how to do that when our heart is still all wrapped up in the outcome. It's really a hard concept, let them, without, number one, God. It's a really hard concept to do, let them without God. And in fact, I've had two people reach out to me just since this book's come out because they had read the book and they felt like there was some great concepts in it, but it just didn't fully land for them because they were like, where's God in this? How do I look at this through the lens of what he wants me to see here? How do I invite him into this? I don't even know what that means. If I just close it off, what do I do with that? And also, I think this concept is really hard to bring into reality without the actual tools to process the emotions of why it's so hard. Because if we just say let them and we don't deal with why it's so hard to just let them, then we're just basically trading one baggage for another, aren't we? If we don't deal with the emotions behind the grief, the sadness, the frustration, the why not God kind of stuff, if we don't have tools to work through that, then when we say let them or something equivalent to it, I don't want to just speak about that book specifically, but when we make that kind of surrenderish statement, then we are pushing down all those emotions and we're not being true to the reality of what we're feeling. We need to let them, yes, but we need to also have God as part of that. And we need to have practical tools to be able to process what's behind it. Now, it's important as part of this conversation to also talk about why is it so hard? Like, why do so many emotions tend to come up when we desire to let go? We desire to not let this be something that's a stumbling block in our relationship or at work anymore. We just want to stop thinking about it, worrying about it, dealing with it. We really do. Of course, we all do. But why is it so hard? So, a couple of questions I think come up and situations come up. And that's what I want to be honest about and admit today with us. So, I think there's this fear of settling. If I let this go, am I settling for less than what God wants? Is this a principle that is important enough for me to just keep pushing on? Like, doesn't God want this in their life? I remember when I was newly married and I had a boss who was talking to me about marriage. She was going through some difficulties in her marriage. And I remember one thing she told me was that in marriage and in parenting, and again, I was freshly married and just had a brand new baby. So I was still learning about a lot of these things. She said, you need to choose the hills you're going to die on. Absolutely. And she had admitted that in her relationship, they had allowed everything to become a hill to die on because she had felt we have to get this right because God wants this and God wants that. And it's like, okay, even if God does want this and it is a biblical issue, it's not an abuse issue. Maybe God does want you to grow more in your relationship with him and you want to encourage a husband towards that. Or maybe it is good for you to pick this up and to start bringing this as a regular practice in your health. These are all good and right things. But because she admitted that she had let those be the things that she focused on and made those the hills that everything was a hill to die on, that there was a lot of tension that was now in their relationship and they had a really hard time connecting. And I know eventually they ended up divorcing. So there's just this bigger picture that has to be present, but we can feel if I let this go, am I giving up on growth? Am I giving up on my role? It's like we're saying this is all there is. And so we have to reconcile that. Another reason why it's hard to let go is that there is grief. Because often what we're holding on to isn't control, it's grief. We're grieving over what we hoped would be different. We're grieving on what hasn't changed. We're grieving what we thought God would do or what this person would say, and they didn't. And once again, they're not doing this. This is especially true in these long family relationships, parenting, like talking about a parent maybe who didn't show up the way that you wanted them to, or the narcissistic behavior or the emotionally absent parent, that kind of stuff where you're like, this is awful. And we need to come to terms with it's not easy for me to just let them because I'm grieving the fact that I wanted something different from a parent. I was hoping it would not always be this way. And every time that he or she does this, it's just a reminder of it. So, how do I just let that go? Another one, and why it's hard to let go, is that we often have this identity, especially as accomplished, successful women who get stuff done. That's you and me. We get stuff done. We wonder if I stop trying to fix this, then what is my role? Who am I? If I stop trying to carry this, what does that say about me? Especially in parenting, I think this comes up like with when we have kids who are teens, because we're like, all right, what is my role now? Because clearly you don't need someone to change your diaper for you because you're past that stage, or your kids even get to a point where they drive themselves places. So you're like, so what is my role? If I'm not, am I there to just fix this for you? And that's not it. But you're like, but then what am I supposed to do? That is a changing role as a parent. And we have always maybe been that person who's the peacemaker, the responsible one, the one who keeps trying, the one who keeps going, keep trying to fix it. And you're like, if I let this go, that's not me anymore. Okay. So some very real reasons why it's hard to let go. And there's also some other inner conflicts that, when we're stuck here, it's not because we don't want peace or we don't love God or we aren't willing to let it go. It's because we have questions like these as well. If I stop thinking about this, am I avoiding it? Am I going to keep pushing it down? What do I do with it? Because I don't know what to do with this. If I forgive this person, am I excusing what happened? Am I just am I saying it's okay that they did that or they continue to act this way? If I let this go, am I giving up on the possibility for God to change them? Am I giving up on the fact that things could be different? And maybe if I just said this or I did this, maybe things would be different. If I stop trying to fix this, am I being unloving? We have sometimes the idea that if the most loving thing I can do is to keep asking them about this or to not let it go, to try to control. And this is a question that gets at the heart of our relationship with God. And I think is underneath a lot of this. Maybe we don't even realize it, but it's, if I'm praying about this, then why is nothing changing? If I'm saying, God, help me resolve this, help us to find more peace, and that is not where we're at, we're just still stuck in this loop. Why isn't it changing? What does that say about me? What does that say about God? That can be this trust in God that just breaks down slowly to where we wonder, why don't I feel peace? Why is it hard for me to trust God with other issues? Because there has been this eating away slowly with these sort of questions. And again, these are not signs of weakness. They're signs of an honest heart trying to reconcile the pain and the responsibility and trust and what to do. It's a heart trying to figure it out. What if you could step out of the noise, slow down your mind, and feel close to God again without the cost, travel, or logistics of an in-person retreat? If your schedule, budget, or family responsibilities make getting away unrealistic right now, I want you to know something. You can still experience the heart of my San Diego Rest Retreat virtually. The virtual retreat is a more accessible, affordable way to experience deep rest with God, giving you everything you need to create your own meaningful rest experience right where you are. You'll receive access to all 3 core retreat teachings with the option to join us live or to watch the recordings at your own pace. You'll also receive a guided workbook, exclusive video devotionals, and simple guidance for creating your own personal rest retreat at home. Our retreat takes place February 25th through March 1st, but remember, you don't have to attend live. We will have the recordings if these dates don't work for you. Friend, you're longing for rest with God that truly restores. This is your invitation to find rest that works for you. Learn more and save your spot at aliciamichelle.com/virtual-rest-retreat. Again, that's aliciamichelle.com/virtual-rest-retreat. And when these questions go unaddressed, we don't actually let go. We just stay stuck. We stay in the place of spinning and of it draining us and of being more angry and of bitterness growing and it affecting our body. There's a spiritual confusion that's part of this as well. And none of this makes you a bad parent, marital partner, career person, even a bad Christian. There are signs that something deeper needs care. Something deeper needs to be addressed. I hope that by looking at these questions, it allows you to take a deep breath. Because maybe you have just been feeling so upset about these things and you haven't understood, why can't I just let it go? And there must be something wrong with me. That's the devil's biggest lie. There's something wrong with you because everybody else can do it. Why can't I just let it go? What is wrong with me? I hope that some of these things have helped you to see that these are reasonable, plausible things that can keep us stuck in being unable to let go. And that these are signs that something different needs to happen. What if there's a different way? So if letting go is harder than it just sounds in your mind, right? That means that there may be grief, there may be fear, there may be this confusion about responsibilities. And that all needs to be sorted with compassion in light of Christ, understanding how our body is absorbing and processing these things, allowing ourselves to have tools, very real tools to look at what it means to identify it happening in our life. What is it? Why is it there? Why does it make sense? How do we process these emotions behind there with God? What are very practical ways to do that in a way that's being honest and real? And how do we apply this? How do we move forward? Letting go is only probably part of it. We might need to learn to pick up some things. We might need to learn some new responsibilities. We might need to understand what is my responsibility, what is God's responsibility, and what's the other person's responsibility. We get those lines confused all the time, and that is what keeps us stuck. So peace, it's not going to come by just forcing ourselves to let it go, to surrender. It comes from understanding what we're holding on to and why. It comes from having that compassion and the willingness to work through it. And again, the tools to make that possible. We can't just go out and say, okay, go carve a statue of Michelangelo's David. Even Michelangelo himself had to have not just the slab of marble and the chisel to be able to do that. He had to have years of training to know how to cut into this marble to create this masterpiece from it. A lot of us don't have that training, that tools. I believe that every person has the ability to know how to manage their emotions with confidence. And that comes with learning some very simple, very understandable tools that we can use in everyday situations and that we get better at as we learn to practice them. And our nervous system starts to choose those because we recognize this is the patterns we're creating and it goes towards those. I want to tell you that we're talking about this whole issue of letting it go, of what's behind why we can't let it go in the Emotional Confidence Club in March and April. In fact, the topic is called Stress Less, Making Peace with What Isn't Changing. It's really easy to just say, surrender, stop thinking about it, let that kid go do what he wants to do. When you're like, yeah, but that's my precious child. How do I do that? Honestly, not just by saying, I'm just going to choose to, whatever. How do I honestly do that? And what do I do when all of this comes up? That's what we're going to walk through. So you don't have to stay stuck here. You can have a different situation. I want to help you stop replaying these same situations on repeat in your mind. I want to help you understand why your brain might keep looping and how to interrupt those loops without feeling shame, how to stop the stress loops, and what to do when the situation pops up again in everyday life. When you're like, here I am stressing about it again. How do we handle that so that you can have less mental noise, less of these imaginary conversations, and more emotional space? I want you to also feel lighter. Even if nothing changes in these situations, nothing may change ever. You don't need people to change. You don't need circumstances to resolve. You don't need the answers to appear. You can still have this internal release. You can have emotional margin around handling it. And you can know that I don't have to carry this anymore. You can really live in that. And you can have more calm in your body, a sense of just exhaling, feeling like, yes, I am at peace with what's happening. Also, I want to give you this gift. And this is a huge gift. This was a huge gift for me when I first received it from God. The ability to understand what is and what is not your responsibility. We get this confused and it causes all sorts of stress loops. So instead of over-functioning, fixing, rescuing, carrying guilt, we learn, where does responsibility actually begin? how to stop confusing love with control. That is a powerful lesson, friend, especially if you have kids where, again, they're older and they're making choices and you're like, okay, what's my loving response in this? We need to learn how to release what was never ours to manage. So this gives us clearer boundaries, less resentment, less emotional exhaustion. And I also want to help you learn how to process some of these emotions behind it, like anger, grief, bitterness, not just push them down by being positive or praying harder or ignoring the feelings or just talking ourselves out of these emotions, which are these kind of coping mechanisms that we've adopted when we just say things like, we'll let them, and we don't deal with what's underneath. This study is going to help you learn how to move through your emotions, how to grieve what hasn't changed, how to forgive without making an excuse for the behavior, how to release without pretending that it's not really painful. How do we do that? This is going to give us less guilt, less emotional buildup, more honesty with God. Also, I know that when we have these kind of freedom, we're going to respond differently in the same old situations. We don't just understand things differently. We are going to react less. We're going to pause more. We all want to be able to pause more, but we will have the skills and the practice and the strength behind it. We will stop being emotionally hijacked, which of course means not just peace in our everyday life, but less regret after some conversations, more confidence in how we show up. We can also understand more about how to have peace that doesn't depend on a specific outcome. A lot of us have tied our peace, if we're being really honest, we've tied our peace to when God fixes this in my life, or when this happens, or when she changes, then I will feel better. And I'm telling you right now that the peace that we are all craving, it doesn't require resolution. It doesn't require answers. It doesn't require the other person to change. We can have a peace that allows us to truly not only say, let them, but it's a steady calm that keeps us going during the frustration moments. And I want you to know that you won't feel alone anymore in this struggle, because there will be other women who can help you understand what they're walking through. I love the ladies in this group. They're so vulnerable and open and caring. It's been beautiful to watch the group dynamics change as we have covered some honestly challenging topics that it's very easy to bury behind a fast and quick answer, the Bible answer, so to speak, that it's like, yes, we know what the church answer is, but what is the thing that you're honestly feeling so that we can learn to fully believe the church answer? Does that make sense? And I love that the ladies in this group are committed to that. And I've just watched them bond and grow together. And so if that is encouraging to you to be able to do this sort of work in a space of safety and of caring with tools that are actually powerful, do equip you to know what to do and how to respond differently, I really invite you to join us in March and April for the Emotional Confidence Club, the study we're doing on stressing less and allowing ourselves to make peace with what isn't changing. So, wrapping all of this up, I hope that this short little stint into understanding more about control and releasing things that are hard and understanding the emotions behind them awakened in you those places where you're like, I see, I see now why, yeah, there are just annoying things that happen in life, but why there has been a whole bunch of stress in my life that I have allowed to perpetuate because I have stayed stuck in these stress loops, and I'm done with that. I'm tired of that. I don't want to live like that anymore. I want freedom here. I want to be able to not feel so stressed in my relationships, to let bitterness be building. I want to know what's my responsibility and what isn't. I want to feel lighter. I don't want to keep replaying these same situations on repeat. I want to experience peace that doesn't depend on an outcome. If that's you, then go to aliciamichelle.com/club and join us in the March and April study for the Emotional Confidence Club. Friend, thank you again for this platform that we can share honestly about these issues from both a neuroscience perspective and a biblical perspective, that we can share honestly, that we can share vulnerably, that We don't have to run away from the deeper emotions that are behind these things. We don't have to just say to each other, just let it go and don't worry about it. God's got it. I really believe that the hunger for peace, the closeness with God, the joy, all of these fruits of the Spirit, that if we can work through and be real with ourselves about what's underneath emotionally, so much is let loose. God is ready to be able to give us this freedom, but we have to be willing to say, I want to take it, Lord. I want to step into this, and I want a different sort of way to interact with my emotions. I want freedom. I want calm, and I want peace in these areas. All right. Take care, friend. Have a wonderful rest of your week, and I'll see you back here next week. Bye-bye. Hey, thanks for joining me today. For full show notes and helpful next step resources, visit aliciamichelle.com/podcast. And if you enjoyed this episode, I'd be honored if you'd leave a 5-star rating and review. Thanks for being here. I'll see you back next week.